I know what you're after. You married for money. Stop saying such nonsense. It's obvious, isn't it? Someone like you, a poor single mother. That's why even after your husband is gone, you continue to stay. You're really an eyesore. Every day, I, Mia, 35 years old, am on the receiving end of such snide remarks from Emma. My father passed away when I was very young, and I was raised in a single-parent family. Thankfully, my mom kept working even after she got married, so we weren't exactly destitute, but we certainly weren't wealthy. Still, my mom was always cheerful, and she worked hard for me. Because of this, I never felt particularly lonely growing up. I planned to start working after graduating from high school. My mom, however, had been diligently saving up for my college education. I loved studying and I really wanted to go to college. But I couldn't bear to burden my mom, who had struggled to raise me, with this desire. More than anything, I wanted to ease her burdens, so I gave up on the idea of going to college right from the start. So, when my mom suggested that I go to college, I was overjoyed. My mom got married when she was 23, and she had me when she was 25. When I was in my third year of high school, my 43-year-old mom, who was still very active, told me, "I'm still in my early 40s, and I'm very healthy. So, Mia, pursue the path you like. It would hurt me far more if you gave up your future because of financial concerns." Mom. I felt tears welling up at my mom's kindness and strength. I took on a part-time job to help cover tuition. Thanks to that, I was able to graduate college without taking out student loans. After graduating college, I joined a large trading company. I worked hard every day because I wanted to make life easier for my mom. Within 5 years of joining the company, I was promoted to administrative assistant and my salary increased. I took my mom on trips and was able to buy her the massage chair she had been wanting. 2 years after becoming an administrative assistant, my work was recognized and I was chosen to be an executive assistant. I got to talk a lot with the president's son, Ethan, and our relationship progressed to dating and eventually marriage. Congratulations, Mia. Be happy. Yes. Thank you for everything. When I expressed my deep gratitude, my mom was moved to tears. She was incredibly happy for me, and it was a truly joyful time. However, that happiness was short-lived. Just 2 years into our marriage, my husband suddenly passed away. He collapsed clutching his chest at work and was rushed to the hospital, but by the time I arrived, he had already stopped breathing. That morning, I had watched him leave for work, cheerfully saying, "I'm off." I could never have imagined such a harsh reality. The shock was so great that for a while, I could barely speak. It was unthinkable that both mother and daughter would lose their husbands. And I can only imagine the grief of Benjamin, the president who had lost his only son. He looked so forlorn and was clearly devastated, just like me. I continued working even after I got married, and as the executive assistant, I spent a lot of time with the president, especially during the day. So, I could see firsthand just how disheartened he was. However, there was one person who didn't seem to be grieving at all. That was Emma. Because we lived together after my marriage, I quickly noticed her attitude. Actually, Emma wasn't related by blood to my husband. Benjamin's real mom passed away when he was just 3 years old. Realizing it would be tough for a man to raise a child alone, he remarried when Benjamin started elementary school, thanks to an introduction from a friend. Now if something happens to my hubby, all his property will be mine. What are you saying? Ethan is gone. Oh, lighten up, it was just a joke. I thought a little cheer might help everyone in these gloomy times. Please, think about the time and place. You must be upset that your plans fell through. Now you won't get a single cent of our man's wealth. I never counted on such a thing from the start. You expect me to believe that? There's no way you'd marry a homely, worthless man like Ethan unless you were after something. Stop talking like that. To me, he was irreplaceable. Emma seemed to think I'd pack up and leave as soon as my husband passed away, but I didn't. Benjamin was acting strong at work and handling his duties just like before, but from my close observations, it was clear to me that he was pushing himself too hard. So, I couldn't bear the thought of leaving the house to someone like Emma. Besides, even though it was only for 2 years, our home was filled with memories of my dear husband. I wanted to bask in their afterglow for a while. Feelings aren't easily severed. Indeed, the time I spent with my husband was a happy one for me. My husband had once told me that Emma was more like a roommate to him than a mother. She was often out and about, and when Benjamin was away on business, she'd often not come home until late at night. But my husband didn't want to worry Benjamin, who was already busy with work, so he kept quiet about it. In fact, Emma was very kind when Benjamin was around. Her sudden change was so drastic that it was as if there were two Emmas. When Benjamin went to work, Emma would see him off with a smile. "I'm counting on you to look after Ethan." "Of course. Ethan is a precious child to me too." "Knowing you're there for him allows me to focus on my work." "Don't worry about a thing. Do your best at work." "Thank you. Have a good day." But the moment the door closed behind him, Emma's smile vanished. "Ah, finally he's gone. Now where should I go today? Maybe I'll invite a friend to the movies." "You're going out again?" "Yes." "Do you have a problem with that?" "No." "Remember, don't bother your father with unnecessary things. He's working hard for you. If you say something, he'll worry and won't be able to concentrate on his work. You should quietly study at home every day." "Okay, I understand." That was the daily routine, but apparently, it didn't bother him too much once he got used to it. In fact, he felt more comfortable when he was not paid too much attention. When he was a child, he thought Emma was like a chameleon. "Well, I don't really mind. I think of her as Dad's wife, not my mom." Benjamin was always grateful to Emma for coming when his child was small, allowing him to focus on his work. Benjamin's company was a legacy from his step-grandfather. Benjamin seemed to have a knack for running it. From the moment he took the helm, the company grew exponentially. Now, he's managing 5 businesses, each pulling in an annual revenue of $100 million. This, of course, means Benjamin is always insanely busy. My husband used to tell me that when he was a kid, Benjamin barely had time to unwind at home. Seeing Benjamin exhausted from work every day, my husband couldn't bring himself to trouble him with unnecessary issues. That's why he never mentioned Emma. Besides, he didn't feel entirely neglected, so there was no need to bother Benjamin unnecessarily. He was content keeping his concerns about Emma to himself. That's so like him. A relaxed individual, he never struck me as the typical heir to a huge company. "Didn't you ever get angry about it?" "Nah, not really. I was okay as long as she was home. It gave Dad peace of mind knowing she was there, so that he could focus on his work. Plus, we never went hungry, and there were always plenty of snacks." "I see." My husband laughed it off, never making a fuss. I loved that about him. Besides, it's not like they were mean to me. They just didn't fuss over me. Sure, Emma would throw some snide comments my way from time to time. But I just took it as the typical mean mother-in-law banter. Plus, she was often out and about, attending theater performances, shopping, or dining with friends. Since I was still working, we didn't cross paths that much. Emma's sarcastic remarks didn't really bother me. If my husband didn't make an issue of it, there was no reason for me to bring it up either. However, being a thrifty person since childhood, Emma's reckless spending did bother me a bit. It felt wasteful. Nevertheless, since neither Benjamin nor my husband voiced any concerns about it, I didn't feel it was my place to chime in. I kept my thoughts to myself. But after my husband passed away, seeing Emma shopping and indulging in luxuries with a happy, carefree attitude left me feeling uneasy. Benjamin was heartbroken. A man who was like a son to him had passed away. And yet Emma showed no signs of sorrow, which only made me more angry. Emma, please, try to be supportive of Benjamin. Be there for him. Even though he's pretending to be okay, he's really lonely. I pleaded. Excuse me? Why on earth would I listen to you? What's your angle, huh? Trying to worm your way into our family for some of the inheritance? I have never even thought about that. Well, Ethan's gone now, so why don't you just leave already? I won't be leaving. Benjamin has said he's fine with me staying as long as I need to. At this, Emma shot me an irritated look, but didn't say anything further. She probably felt relieved knowing she didn't have to worry about me inheriting Benjamin's wealth. But 3 years after my husband's death, Emma was becoming increasingly annoyed with me still being around. Her sarcastic remarks were becoming more frequent and more hurtful. After all, whether at home or at the office, I'm always with Benjamin. Emma seemed to think I was buttering him up, scheming to take over his fortune. It hurt to be perceived in such a light, and I began to question myself, wondering whether it was right to stay in a house where the husband was no longer present. I could gauge Benjamin's situation at the office every day. It might be better for me to return to my single mom instead of living here, enduring Emma's sarcasm. Mom is turning 60 this year, and last year marked the 3rd anniversary of my dad's passing. I had been contemplating my future when Benjamin collapsed. He was fortunate to survive, but there was a high possibility he would need caregiving even after discharge from the hospital. At the company, things didn't immediately fall apart when Benjamin collapsed since he had properly trained his successors. However, Emma's attitude noticeably shifted. That man got what he deserved. He's been so stingy lately. What do you mean, stingy? Our credit card limit has been decreased, our living expenses have been cut. Is the company in trouble? I don't think that's the case. Emma, as it happens, missed her husband's 3rd anniversary ceremony. Last year, due to a hangover from the previous day's wild night out, revealed by the credit card bill. It seemed Benjamin, who rarely checked on Emma's spending, had investigated this time. Missing their son's 3rd memorial was too much, even for him. In his fury, Benjamin decided to limit the money Emma could use. That said, she was getting more than enough money for a normal life, so there was no need to complain. Benjamin himself said that the company might be in trouble. Ethan's absence hit him hard, and before he knew it, things had turned sour. Benjamin said that? Don't play dumb. You know it too. All because we lost a single son. How does that justify ruining the company? No, I truly didn't. And yet he says, despite his condition, he's going to rest at home, live a long life. He's been telling people the doctor said he could live to 100. That's good to hear. There's nothing good about it. If he lives that long, needing care, it won't be a joke. Emma, her nostrils flaring, began to launch into a tirade about Benjamin. Hearing her call him dull and annoying left a sour taste in my mouth. Who did she think had been funding her lavish lifestyle? Even if Benjamin's company was in trouble, she could at least offer to support him, I thought. And then, Emma said something even more unthinkable. So, I've decided to divorce him. Pardon? Just think about it. The company might be in danger. What if we end up in debt? It's only wise to get the property settled and leave before the money runs out. Are you planning to abandon Benjamin when he needs help? I can't handle a bedridden old man with no money left. I'm going to take what I can before his wealth is gone and say goodbye. Is that so? Emma's words, said as if she had come up with a brilliant plan, brought up a feeling of disgust in me. However, just a week after having that conversation, Benjamin's condition drastically deteriorated, and he passed away all too quickly. He's gone too, just 3 years after my husband passed. Everything seemed to go dark. Benjamin's voice was so similar to my husband's. Sometimes when we talked, it felt like I was talking to my husband. Not being able to talk to him, not being able to hear his voice anymore, it was too much to bear. Oh no, that man is gone to the afterlife? What perfect timing. He still had assets left, right? His company didn't collapse yet. Maybe he died before taking on debt for my sake? This means all remaining assets are mine. How fantastic. Emma, you sound pleased. Even though Benjamin has just passed away. Oh, you noticed? Too bad for you, though, you're not getting any inheritance. I would have preferred Benjamin to be alive than any inheritance. Don't give me that high-minded talk now. You're just pretending to be tough, trying to impress everyone, aren't you? Even if you asked, there isn't a single cent to give you. Despite Benjamin's death, it seemed like all Emma could think about was money. How could she be so heartless? Thinking of that, I felt sorry for Benjamin, which only added to my grief. So, you don't have to come to the funeral. What? Strangers are not allowed at the funeral. I see, that's how it is. Emma didn't seem to understand reality. But I didn't feel the need to explain it to her. Are you sure about that? Of course. Now that he's gone, I, his wife, am in charge. Understood. So, 2 days later, Benjamin's funeral was held quietly with only close relatives. Respecting his wishes not to have a grand company funeral. After the funeral, I saw a bunch of missed calls from Emma on my phone, but I didn't return them. Emma tried to reach me many times afterwards, but I completely ignored her. Then one day, she suddenly showed up at my workplace. I finally got you. What are you thinking? You're not answering my calls. Oh, Emma, what can I do for you? Stop messing around. I was kicked out of the funeral home. You were the one who should have been left out. I called you so many times on the day. What's the meaning of this? Huh? Well, you're not my mother-in-law anymore, Emma. What? Well, you said that strangers are not allowed at the funeral. So, we had a family-only funeral and then I asked Emma, who's now a stranger, to refrain from attending. You are the stranger! No, the stranger here is Emma. What? When Benjamin fell ill and was told he'd be bedridden, Emma had served him with divorce papers. Emma seemed to think that because Benjamin was hospitalized, he had gone to heaven without submitting those divorce papers. But those divorce papers, I had submitted them as Benjamin asked me to, so Emma is a stranger to us in name and reality. Back then, Benjamin had shared a lot with me. It seems he told Emma that the company was in danger and that he might end up in debt. If that happened, they couldn't live the life they had been living. From then on, it would be a modest life for just the two of them. And so on. He thought that if Emma was willing to support him through that, they could continue as a couple. But at his words, Emma frowned and coldly responded. Then it's probably better to split before you're burdened with debt. Benjamin collapsed 1 month after that conversation with Emma. Even after he woke up, he knew his health was not good. But he hid it and told Emma that he was in such a state that he'd have to let go of the company, and he would probably have to rely on her for care. As expected, Emma then proposed a divorce. She probably wanted to divorce before he was burdened with debt and get some money through property division. But Benjamin, who had realized his limited time left, had already donated most of his personal assets, except the house, to children and animal shelters and volunteer groups. And he had already appointed talented subordinates as presidents of his companies and transferred all the shares. So there was almost no property left to give to Emma. When he told her this, the color drained from Emma's face.
So, I don't get anything?
Well, strictly speaking, it's not exactly zero. I did leave a few $100s in savings.
A few $100s, that's hardly enough.
Even though Benjamin had told me this beforehand, hearing it from my mouth, I could see how thorough Benjamin was. He must not have wanted to split any property with Emma. Maybe it was Emma's attitude when her husband passed that pushed Benjamin to be this resolute.
But there is the house. If I sell that...
Oh yes. Please move out of that house as soon as possible. I'm staying with Mom for now, but I plan to move back eventually.
What are you saying?
You're a complete stranger. You have even less rights than I do. As I said earlier, the stranger here is you, Emma, who is already divorced. Also, the house was originally inherited by Benjamin from his grandfather, so it doesn't count for property division during divorce.
So why do you have the right to live in that house?
Because when I got married, Benjamin and I adopted each other.
What?
So I have the right to inherit Benjamin's property. Benjamin left me that house.
Hardly believable, isn't it?
The idea of adopting me had come from Benjamin himself when we got married. I didn't think about it much at the time. I was going to be marrying his son, and in his eyes, that made me his daughter. So, I went along with the adoption. But, when my husband passed away, I kept quiet about this. I was afraid that if I mentioned it, Emma would think that I was after the family fortune. So, I have work to do. Could you please leave? I asked Emma. If you need to communicate anything, please do so through our lawyers. I've sought the advice of our company's legal counsel. I called security and had them escort Emma out of the company premises. I made it clear that she was not allowed to step foot in the company again. Emma put up a fierce resistance, but when I threatened to call the police, she quietly left. She attempted to contact me numerous times after that, but I ignored her completely. Her relentless efforts to make a claim on our fortune only resulted in a barrage of complaints to our lawyer. Our company was far from going under, and Emma couldn't understand why. She argued that if it wasn't bankrupt, there should be wealth to share. But the company had already been handed over to a successor before Benjamin's passing, and it was no longer in his possession. Therefore, there was nothing left for Emma to claim. As for the family's real estate properties, they had already been settled in the divorce before Benjamin's death. The lawyer patiently explained that Emma had no right to any of it. Our lawyer, somewhat exasperated, confided that Emma had been quite persistent. Emma, who had been under the impression that she was entitled to a share of the wealth, had recklessly racked up debt on her credit card. Now, she was stuck paying it off. She was working multiple part-time jobs from morning till night. However, her financial woes were not my concern. Emma was 10 years younger than Benjamin. They had married when she was 25, and now she was 55. They had been married for almost 30 years, which meant that Emma was entitled to survivor benefits from the Social Security taxes Benjamin had paid, even after their divorce. However, she would only be eligible for these benefits when she turned 60, which was still 5 years away. Furthermore, She needed to have filed a claim for a division of the pension within 2 years of the divorce. I wasn't sure if Emma was aware of this, nor did I have any intention of enlightening her. I had no sympathy or obligation to worry about Emma's well-being. So here I am now, living in the home I once shared with my mom, Benjamin, and my husband. My days pass calmly and peacefully. There are moments when I remember my husband and Benjamin's smiles, and I can't help but shed tears. But, remembering their warm smiles, I too want to live each day with a smile on my face. At my in-laws' house, I end up being treated like a domestic worker, and to add insult to injury, I'm the only one without a fancy steak. I sigh, thinking, not this again.
You took my loving son from me after all. Suffering is what you deserve,
says my mother-in-law, Laura, making me wonder if I've had enough. While sipping coffee, pondering what to do, my brother-in-law, Brian, looks puzzled and asks,
"Are you eating? Oh, you don't have a steak."
"It's the usual," I reply. Immediately, Brian becomes furious. My name is Stephanie. I'm a 33-year-old working mother. I've been married to Ronald for 5 years. Not having children yet is a concern, but Ronald's laid-back attitude of,
"It'll happen eventually,"
makes it hard to take the next step. Our marriage is neither good nor bad, just average. After 5 years, the honeymoon phase has definitely faded, leaving us in a comfortable yet unexciting relationship. Every year, Ronald's family hosts a gathering of relatives. We avoid busy travel periods like Christmas and summer vacations, opting instead for a warmer time of year. I don't have any complaints about the gathering itself, but how I'm treated there is another story. Ronald has 1 brother and 2 sisters. His brother lives abroad and rarely returns. His sisters are married and live close to the in-laws' house, yet their husbands never attend these gatherings. Perhaps they avoid it out of consideration, which I think is wise. I'd prefer not to go either, but Ronald won't listen to me.
"Help Mom out, will you? A lot of people are coming,"
he says. It's hard to say no when asked for help. But it would be fine if it really was just help. Yet, the reality is far from it. Laura sits in the living room, not moving an inch, happily chatting with relatives she hasn't seen in a while. The few times she speaks to me are to say,
"Stephanie, we've run out of snacks. Can you go buy some?"
Or,
"I'm a bit peckish. Could you make something?"
And sometimes even,
"I'm a bit busy, so could you also take care of the cleaning and laundry?"
I wonder where she finds the time to laugh and eat snacks if she's so busy. Deborah and Emily, my sisters-in-law, are no different. They don't lift a finger, even though they both have young children. Yet, when one of the kids accidentally spills a drink, they say, "Oh dear, look what happened. Stephanie, why weren't you watching the kids?" Blaming me unfairly. Here I am, somehow tasked by Laura to clean the bathroom. How am I supposed to keep an eye on the kids from in there? And what's with them, holding beers in their right hands? By the way, James is quietly munching on snacks with a beer in hand. This is the case with the residents of the in-laws' house, which is a gathering place for relatives, so other relatives naturally use me as a housekeeper. Do this, do that, go shopping, take care of the kids. Yet, not a word of appreciation for me, instead.
"You're useless, aren't you?"
I'm met with cold stares. But the worst time of all is dinner. At these family gatherings, a high-end steak is always served every year. Laura is the one who orders it. Though expensive doesn't always mean delicious, this place is well known for its tasty food. That's why Laura orders from there, and indeed, the relatives all enjoy it, praising its deliciousness. But I have never once had the chance to eat it. Yes, there's none for me. only my portion is missing. After running around all day, doing the hardest work. In 5 years of marriage, my portion has never been prepared.
Stephanie, he who does not work shall not eat, right? A worthless wife like you doesn't deserve to eat.
Laura says, and then, out of pity, though, I brewed this especially for you. Enjoy. Handing me a cup of weak-looking coffee. This has been going on for 5 years. I think I've done well to endure it. But enough is enough. No matter what Ronald says, I'm not going to any more family gatherings. That's what I decide. Unfortunately, just as I make this decision, I'm informed that Brian will be attending the next gathering. Brian, living abroad, only returns to America once every few years, and I haven't seen him since our wedding. With Brian coming back, it feels hard to justify not attending. So I reluctantly decide to go. Next time then, I'll skip when Brian isn't there. With this resolve, telling myself it's the last time, I muster up my energy. And on the day of the gathering.
Stephanie, we're running low on drinks. Can you grab some from the fridge? Oh no, my daughter just dropped the cake. Stephanie, clean it up, quick. What is this? Stephanie, these snacks aren't enough. Make something more filling, will you?
A barrage of demands from Laura and Deborah. Even Ronald joins in, saying,
Hey Stephanie, Mom's getting old. Take care of the bathroom cleaning for her. It's just once in a while, so make it sparkle, will you?
Then adding,
Make my whiskey a hot toddy, will you?
So, I'm busily fulfilling each request, one after the other. Meanwhile, Ronald, the in-laws, Deborah, and the other relatives don't lift a finger, enjoying themselves eating, drinking, talking, and playing. I'm starting to get really angry. Should I just throw in the towel and head home? Just when I thought about leaving, Brian arrived at the worst possible timing. Long time no see, everyone. As Brian entered, the whole place lit up with excitement. Everyone was greeting him, asking if he's been well. And then, drinks started flowing again, and I completely lost my chance to leave. I sighed, resigning myself to the thought that today would be the end of it. And so, I continued to move around, following orders. At one point, while I was preparing snacks in the kitchen, Brian came in. Stephanie, are you okay? It looks like you're doing everything by yourself, he said with a concerned look. This was the first time anyone at an in-laws house gathering had shown concern for me. I was unexpectedly moved. Oh, no, it's just... I'm happy if everyone's having a good time, I replied. But you shouldn't have to do everything alone, right? I'll go talk to Mom and the others, he said, about to approach Laura, Deborah, and Emily, but I hurriedly stopped him. I didn't mind clashing with Laura and the others since I didn't plan to come back in the future. However, I felt bad for Brian, who had just returned after a long time, getting into trouble with the family.
I'm fine, really, I'm fine,
I insisted, managing to stop Brian. Are you sure? If you need anything, don't hesitate to tell me, he said before returning to everyone else. Perhaps due to his long time abroad, Brian seemed to have different values from Laura, the relatives, and the rest. And then, I felt a little sad. I wished Ronald, not Brian, had said those words to me. Feeling a tightness in my chest, I clasped my hands in front of me when Laura entered the kitchen. I braced myself, thinking she'd ask me to make something, but instead, she began making a phone call. Apparently to the usual high-end steakhouse. They had a reservation for a large group, but as always, she called on the day to confirm. I could hear Laura's voice as she sat on a kitchen chair, talking.
Around 6 p.m. as usual, please. Yes, the number of people is correct, she said.
The word number of people involuntarily made my body react. The number of people, huh? Surely, my portion wouldn't be included again this year. I no longer harbored any expectations. It's become normal for me not to have any. Though honestly, I'd rather just go home if that's the case. I must have been staring at Laura because our eyes met after she hung up the phone. Immediately, Laura smirked maliciously.
I'm looking forward to the high-end steak this year. You like that steak from there too, don't you, Stephanie?
She taunted, knowing full well I've never had it. With a strained smile. No, I've never had it, I managed to say in response. I didn't dare say more, fearing worse words might escape. Then, with exaggerated surprise, Laura feigned ignorance.
What, really? You've never had it? Oh dear, that's too bad. But don't worry, you'll get to eat it later.
She patted my shoulder with a smile. Should I hurl a hot, freshly fried potato at that heavily made-up face? Vulgar words nearly slipped out. No, I mustn't stoop to Laura and the others' level, it would only lower my own standards. I must endure, I kept telling myself desperately. Seeing me bite my tongue, a smug smile spread across Laura's face. Ronald is my precious son, you took him from me, so you might as well suffer, she said. By the time I processed her words, Laura had already returned to the living room. That wasn't a misunderstanding, was it? Was Laura intentionally making my life miserable? Because she loves her son too much? While I'm unsure about Deborah and the others, it's clear that Laura is deliberately harassing me.
Unforgivable.
To think someone's hard work is met with not a word of gratitude, but a wish for their suffering. There's no need for me to play the good wife anymore. As I pondered what to do next, I ignored the tasks given to me. Meanwhile, the steakhouse delivered the steaks. Am I the one at fault, automatically set to work despite my irritation? I arranged the steaks and prepared the coffee. Though there are distinctions between adult and children's portions, each person has their steak allotted. However, as expected, I guess, it's another day of there being none in front of me. Thinking it was obvious and turning to Ronald beside me.
Isn't there one for you?
I found him feigning ignorance. Yes, it was all too blatant. Not just Ronald but James, Deborah, and everyone else seem unaffected by this routine neglect. Laura also put on quite the show, saying,
"Oh dear, I'm so sorry. It seems I forgot Brian was coming back and got the number wrong."
Lies. You were the most excited about Brian's return. Looking around, everyone seemed to be in on it, their smiles thinly veiling their malice. All too aware of Laura's doting on Ronald. Well, if you're a wife, you'll just have to put up with it. Whose voice was that? Probably Laura's brother or some old man. Just then, Brian, who had stepped away for a work call, returned and took his seat. As everyone started eating together, I pondered how to handle the simmering anger. While I drank my hot coffee, Brian, puzzled, asked,
"Aren't you eating, Stephanie?"
Of course, it's normal to care if only I don't have any. The ones who don't care, except for Brian, are the ones who are strange. Yes, it's always like this, I replied casually, returning to my coffee.
What? Mom, where's Stephanie's portion?
Surprised, Brian looked at Laura, who feigned trouble. Well, you see, I forgot you were coming back and only ordered the usual number of portions. A blatant lie. She definitely ordered one extra for Brian, not forgetting him. After finishing my coffee, I poured myself another cup.
What? I'm so sorry, Stephanie. I don't mind, so please have my portion.
Caught off guard by his offer, I paused mid-sip. I wasn't the only one who was surprised.
What are you saying? You can eat. It's a rare American steak, after all, something you can't get over there. The taste is top-notch.
But Mom, Stephanie was the one running around doing everything. She should be the one eating it.
It's only natural for a wife. She's the wife, so it's expected of her to work when she's here.
Laura said in a fluster. So, because I'm the wife, working is a given, huh? It was the moment my eyes took on a cold hue. Bang! The table shook, making the coffee nearly topple over. Suddenly, Laura fell silent, and a hush fell over the room.
Brian!
Ronald's voice echoed unnaturally in the quiet room. Brian had slammed his fist on the table with such force. Brian, looking down, was an imposing sight to Laura and the relatives, who watched in apprehension. After a moment of silence,
She's expected to what? Eek!
At his unusually low voice, Laura let out a strange cry. Brian glared at Laura from under his brows, and it almost seemed as if sound effects were visible behind him. Or they might actually be visible.
So what if she's the wife? Expected to work? And what does that have to do with not having a steak? Well, that's because if she's an inadequate wife, then she doesn't deserve to.
Bam!
Eek!
Laura let out another strange yelp as Brian hit the table again, causing her to lean back.
Don't be ridiculous. That's absurdly outdated. This is nothing but harassment towards Stephanie. Yipe!
Laura crumpled under Brian's booming voice, the relatives turned pale, and the children were nearly in tears. Amid this, Brian continued.
Mom, don't tell me you're harassing her because she's Ronald's wife? That's not. What about you guys?
Leaving Laura, who couldn't articulate a denial, Brian turned his gaze to Deborah and Emily, his sisters, who also gasped in fear.
I find it hard to believe, but has this been going on for a while?
When Laura and the others remained silent, Brian turned to ask me. Without any reason to stay silent or lie, I nodded.
Stephanie?
Laura panicked, but I ignored her and spoke up.
Since I got married 5 years ago, this has been the treatment at every family gathering. I'm treated like a household worker all day, and I've never once had the privilege of enjoying the expensive steak that's always served. It's always I forgot, while Laura and Ronald eat deliciously right in front of me. Ronald, is this true? Huh. Well, yeah, sort of.
Overwhelmed by Brian's presence, Ronald turned pale and nodded.
You let your wife be treated like this and said nothing. But Mom said a bad wife needs to be disciplined. So, you think Stephanie is a bad wife? What? Well, no, I mean, you're the worst.
With that, Brian turned away from Ronald as if there was nothing more to be said. Ronald was pale as a ghost.
You all are the worst, Dad too. And you all as well.
With that, Brian surveyed the roomful of relatives. No one could retort, all hanging their heads with faces turned blue. Finally, Brian gave Laura one more look, no, a glare.
Eek! I know you dote on Ronald. He's the youngest and spoiled, I get that. But this is different. You all, not seeing this as abnormal, are out of your minds. There's a reason for this. That doesn't matter. Just from watching today, I've seen enough.
Without waiting for Laura's response, Brian turned to James.
It's clear to me now how low you all are. I have no obligation to do anything for such parents anymore. Don't expect any more money from me. What?
Voices from the in-laws overlapped in shock. James, in his early 60s and already retired, couldn't make ends meet on his small pension. In these tough times, finding a job at his age was nearly impossible, leaving him unemployed. So, how could they afford such expensive steaks? Yes, it was because of Brian's remittances. Working abroad and single, Brian had a considerable income and was sending a significant amount back home. Hearing that these would cease, Laura's face went white.
Wait, please! If you do that, our living expenses. With Dad's retirement money and his pension, you should manage, right? I wasn't sending money for you to lavish on expensive steaks for the whole family. If you have that much leeway, you don't need my help.
Not just James and Laura were flustered, but Deborah and Emily as well.
Brian will be in trouble without your support. You've been covering the kids' lesson fees. And us too. We were counting on your help for the private elementary school exams.
Despite their lamentations, Brian cut them off with a firm,
I don't care.
"No." Deborah and Emily were left to hang their heads in defeat. Then, Brian turned to Ronald.
Ronald, I have no intention of employing a man who doesn't cherish his wife. You're fired. What?
Ronald's scream was the loudest of all. Indeed, Ronald worked at the Boston branch of a company run by Brian. With a decent salary.
I had plans to leave the American operations to you eventually. But a man who can't protect his wife can't protect his employees either. It's a shame.
Brian's voice was full of anger, not regret.
Wait, Brian. I apologize, so please, anything except firing me.
The moment Ronald said this, Brian's expression turned furious.
You should be apologizing to Stephanie, not me.
Overwhelmed by Brian's fury, Ronald collapsed. Before anyone noticed, the children had been moved to another room, leaving only the adults, now pale and trembling. The premium steak in front of me seemed to be saying, "You're still not eating me," so I took a slice from Ronald's plate.
Oh, this is delicious.
The steak was so good that I couldn't help but speak out. Indeed, Ronald was enjoying this delicious steak while neglecting me. I see. It's disheartening. My eternal love cooled in an instant. They say a grudge over food is scary, but mine exploded all at once after accumulating. If only Ronald had protected me from Laura's bullying. If only Ronald had said,
"Want to share mine?"
The situation might have been different. But Ronald did not do that. He simply laughed and silently watched Laura's harassment towards me. Brian looked at me. "Stephanie, I'm truly sorry for having such foolish relatives. I'm embarrassed to call them family. I don't know how I can make it up to you, but I'll do what I can."
Could you employ me at your company, then?
My voice came out quicker than I thought. I had been interested in working for a foreign company, but never made the move. With Ronald being fired, a position would be open. I asked without much hope, but he instantly agreed, "Sure." Yes.
What? Wait, Stephanie. Brian, are you serious?
I don't lie.
Well, it's okay, I guess. If Stephanie earns a good salary at your place, we'll manage somehow.
It seemed Ronald was worried about maintaining our standard of living.
Manage somehow with my income?
As if that's possible, I retorted. "Oh, I'll be divorcing you. As for alimony, I'll claim what I can. Without children, there's not much to claim, but I'll take what I'm entitled to." Again, Ronald exclaimed.
What?
Brian's words have opened my eyes. I had already decided this would be my last visit here. Divorcing will mean I never have to come here again. I stated flatly, without any inflection. Ronald's face turned from pale to completely white. Is he wearing foundation? I casually turned to James, Laura, Deborah, and Emily. With that, my role as Ronald's wife concludes today. I doubt we'll ever meet again. Goodbye. I said this calmly and stood up.
Guess I'll be leaving too.
Brian also stood up, prompting a startled Laura to frantically cling to me.
Wait, Stephanie, give me a chance to apologize. I was truly wrong. It was just a little jealousy. I won't do it again, so please, forgive me. If you forgive me, I don't think Brian will say anything about stopping the support.
Like I'd forgive you, idiot. I didn't yell, nor did I smile and speak in a sarcastic manner. I spoke robotically, with lifeless eyes. Did you know? Sometimes, saying things this way can instill more fear in the other person.
Eek!
And it worked wonders. Laura let out a strange cry from her throat, dropping her hands to the floor and collapsing. Deborah and Emily were pale, as were the other relatives. And Ronald was ghostly white. Did his soul leave his body? Good day to you all. With a bright smile, I finally left the in-laws' house. Sorry about this, Stephanie. I'll refer you to a lawyer regarding the divorce, Brian said as we left together, apologizing repeatedly. Afterward, the lawyer Brian referred was excellent, ensuring I received proper compensation in the divorce. Ronald, now my ex-husband, whined until the end, but he quieted down when threatened with court. He seemed to really dislike the idea of going to court. After being fired, Ronald struggled with job hunting for a while. Being incompetent, he couldn't find work, and Brian ended up taking care of him. It seemed unlikely he'd find a job easily. He tried working part-time, but eventually ended up unemployed and retreated to his parents' home. James, Laura, Deborah, and the others bombarded me with calls. Apparently, they couldn't reach Brian anymore and wanted me to persuade him to restart the remittances. So, I told them.
Like I'd know, idiots.
They were speechless on the other end of the phone. I hung up and blocked their numbers. If they tried calling from another number, I'd consult my lawyer. But I doubted they had the guts for that. As for me, I'm working hard at my new job, embracing a fresh start. The new field was challenging and busy, but my 5 years of enduring harassment and being treated like a domestic worker at the in-laws' house wasn't for nothing. I gradually got the hang of it, thanks to my perseverance. Apparently, Ronald had been quite negligent in his work, relying on his status as the president's brother. The employees, seeing my work ethic, thanked me with tears, saying,
"Thank you for coming."
While I'm not thinking about remarriage just yet, having just divorced, I do hope to carefully choose someone who truly values their spouse next time. To do that, I need to sharpen my judgment, and so, I continue to work hard every day.